Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. A fire rips through a crowded bar in Crans-Montana, Switzerland, killing around 40 people and injuring more than 100. Swiss officials describe it as one of the country's worst tragedies as investigators work to determine the cause. Several people are killed as large economic protests in Iran turn violent, with clashes reported in multiple provinces. State media says 3 protesters are killed and 17 injured in an attack on a police station in Lordstown. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he is open to negotiating with the United States on combating drug trafficking. He strikes a more conciliatory tone towards Washington even as he remains silent on reports of a recent CIA-led strike. Flights from Aden International Airport are suspended amid growing tensions between the STC separatists and Yemen's Saudi-backed government. Authorities say operations are halted as the power struggle escalates and it is unclear when services will resume. Democrat Zoran Mamdani is sworn in as New York City mayor, vowing to push an agenda focused on making the city more affordable for working people. His left-wing victory, won last November, is seen as politically significant ahead of this year's US midterm elections. China says President Xi Jinping will host South Korean President Lee Jae-myung from Sunday, signaling a push to strengthen ties. It is their second meeting in 2 months, with Beijing emphasizing economic cooperation and tourism amid regional strains. Ukraine and Russia accuse each other of hitting civilians over New Year, with Moscow saying 24 people die in a strike on a hotel in occupied territory, while Kiev reports casualties from a broad air attack. The claims come as intensive peace talks continue under US President Donald Trump's oversight. Drug companies plan to raise US prices on at least 350 medications, including COVID, RSV and shingles vaccines, plus the cancer drug Ibrance. The median increase is around 4% as planned hikes exceed last year, despite government pressure cuts. Now, our top story of the hour, we start in Europe, and around 40 people were killed and at least 115 others injured after a massive fire tore through a crowded bar during New Year celebrations at the luxury Swiss ski resort of Crans-Montana. Most of the injured remain in serious condition. Authorities say the blaze broke out at the Lee Constellation Bar, packed with young revelers welcoming in the new year. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, but many victims suffered severe burns, making identification very difficult. Let's listen in to what some eyewitnesses and survivors had to say.
J'étais pas là-bas, j'ai des amis qui sont venus, qui m'ont appelé. Et donc du coup, je suis arrivé en voiture, je suis arrivé. Et de là, tout le monde était brûlé, tout le monde hurlait, tout le monde criait. Ils étaient déplacés du Constellation au 1900 et non, c'était fou, c'était un film d'horreur. Ouais, de vrai, c'était un film d'horreur. J'ai jamais vu ça de ma vie. Et puis moi, j'ai perdu ma meilleure amie qui était dans mes bras. On a essayé de la réanimer. Il y avait des pompiers, c'était des policiers, il y avait tout le monde partout. C'était dingue. C'était dingue. Vraiment, je souhaite ça à personne. C'est pour ça, comme je dis à tout le monde, c'est maintenant qu'il faut qu'on soit ensemble. Il faut que tout le monde sait. On travaille ici. Les restaurants, les bars, tout a fermé. Parce que c'est un deuil non seulement à Crans-Montana, mais ça doit être un deuil national et international. C'est des jeunes de 18 à 22, 25 ans maximum qui sont décédés ce soir-là. Et voilà, moi je suis juste venu faire mon deuil ici. Je suis pas venu là pour me mettre devant les caméras ou quoi que ce soit. C'est pas mon intérêt. C'est pas mon intérêt, mais voilà. Une grande tristesse. Je suis détruit. Et comme je vous ai dit, ce qu'on a vu, c'était un film d'horreur. C'était un film d'horreur. C'est un truc que tu vois que dans les films.
Je ne vous donnerai pas de nom, mais on en a qui sont partis avec le feu. Il y en a qui sont blessés, on ne sait pas où ils sont. Il y en a qui sont portés disparus. On prie pour eux et puis nous, ça nous fait un choc, évidemment. On ne sait pas où sont nos amis. On a vu qu'ils sont malheureusement tombés. Et puis de voir ces scènes avec des gens qui sont brûlés, tout ça sortir, c'était très très choquant. Et puis moi, c'est vrai que moi je suis sorti, mes copains m'attendaient dehors et puis je me suis mis à genoux devant eux parce que j'étais heureux d'être sorti. On crie au feu, et puis on s'est dit que c'était une blague ou que c'était pas forcément sérieux. Et puis d'un coup, très gros nuage de fumée noire, on n'arrivait plus à respirer et puis dans notre tête, il faut sortir. Et tout le monde sort, mais ça a fait un attroupement, donc nous on n'a pas pu sortir. Donc on a essayé de se cacher. Puis moi quand je suis remonté en haut, je me suis dit que soit j'allais y passer ou soit j'allais réussir à m'en sortir. Mais le seul moyen c'était de passer par une fenêtre, mais les fenêtres étaient bloquées. Alors du coup j'ai pris une table, j'ai essayé de la casser contre une fenêtre, j'ai pas réussi. Et je me suis dit que j'allais y passer, mais finalement j'ai réussi à donner un coup de pied dans la vitre, elle est tombée. Et puis nous on est sortis, on a réussi à faire sortir du monde. C'est vrai que j'ai perdu mes chaussures, j'ai perdu mon manteau, j'ai perdu tout ce qui est matériel, mais finalement c'est pas ça qui compte. Moi je suis encore vivant et puis on prie pour tous ceux qui...
We move to Latin America for our next story, and Venezuela's government has freed 88 people who were detained after protests following the country's July 2024 election. This marks the second mass release in just 2 weeks. The latest move follows the December the 26th release of 99 people, bringing the total number to 187. Officials say the releases are part of a comprehensive review process ordered by President Nicolas Maduro. Local NGOs, however, have verified at least 55 prisoners who were released, and mostly from Tonconon prison in central Venezuela, and estimate that around 900 political prisoners remain in detention. The Venezuelan government insists it does not hold political prisoners, saying that those arrested were seeking to destabilize the country. These releases come amid pressure from the United States, where President Donald Trump has repeatedly called for Maduro to step down. The US has also increased its military presence in the Caribbean, conducted strikes on suspected drug boats, and seized 2 fully loaded Venezuelan oil tankers. Joining us now is Shruti Dasgupta, an international affairs expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us, Shruti, here on NewsX World. Venezuela says that these releases are part of a comprehensive review process. Is this genuine form or just political optics under the US pressure which Caracas is receiving right now?
Over the past years, while Hugo Chavez or Maduro were elected or part of the government or heading the government in Venezuela, they have managed to not just occupy the seats in the parliament, they've also managed to gain significant control of the judiciary. So when we say that whether these prisoners were duly processed, there is a large amount of doubt on it, because the judiciary seems to be compromised in a little bit by the government in place. So I don't know, out of the 900 so that are being claimed by the NGOs, how many are actually political prisoners or people who are destabilizing the nation, because destabilizing the nation for Maduro and his regime and the regime that was there before him basically meant anybody who was not happy with their policies or wanted to protest against those policies. What they're releasing right now are people who were arrested after the elections. They're not releasing most people that are there are pre-elections also. They've arrested a large number of people that were arrested for protests against policies, protests against Maduro. So there were pre-election arrests as well, and those are yet to be addressed. So we do know that there is more than a large grey zone that exists in terms of judicial and inquiry as well as processing as far as Venezuela is concerned.
Yes, indeed. And how exposed do you think Maduro's government feels right now? Of course, this comes a day when we have had a statement from the Venezuelan leader saying that he's open to negotiations with the United States. Do you think Donald Trump will accept that invitation?
Well, one, that message was a pre-recorded message. So they did not know that they were going to be pinned on those CIA strikes that they are yet to comment on. that the strikes by CIA, drone strikes by CIA on Venezuelan ports show that the action on land that Trump has promised has begun, and Venezuela is pinned to the wall. Maduro knows that either he leaves power voluntarily or cuts a deal which is better than what Maria is offering Trump with the USA, or it faces a complete hostile takeover of that nation via military might. So he is cornered, there is no doubt. And this is something that we analysts have been predicting, because it's a very small nation. It really, truly cannot do much. It may make big sounds, it might put up a good front, it might invoke higher powers, but right now Russia is fighting its own wars, and China doesn't really want to get involved here. It's got its own troubles brewing in the South China Sea. And also, this particular movement, as well as the Honduras and the others that are happening in the Caribbean, in the South Americas, as we can say, is part of the national security policy of 2025 that was released in the last few months of the year. That states that America, USA as such, needs to focus on the Americas, North and South. And they need to keep control of these nations, regime-wise, policy-wise, trade-wise. And the actions that Trump is taking towards Venezuela is a feature of that particular policy. That policy focuses on China, but neglects, but calls Russia as a reduced power and more of an ally rather than an enemy. So we know where this is headed. Maduro is pinned. Maria is pro-capitalism, anti-socialism, which is exactly what Maduro is about. So unless he cuts a very beautiful deal and lets USA take a big chunk out of Venezuelan economy, they're not going to be finding any truce for themselves until unless there is a regime change.
Indeed. Shruti, stay with us as we move on to our next story. And for it, we head to the United States, and former New York Mayor Eric Adams has criticised successor Zoran Mamdani over revoked executive orders on anti-Semitism. Following his inauguration at the start of 2026, Mayor Zoran Mamdani issued an executive order nullifying all executive orders implemented by Adams since September 2024, which is the date Adams was indicted on corruption charges that were later dropped. Among the revoked orders were 1. Adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, which encompasses certain forms of criticism of Israel, as well as an order opposing the campaign to boycott Israel. Adams shared a letter from a Jewish group condemning Mamdani's action and posted on social media that the move undermines Mamdani's promise of a new era and unity, saying this isn't new and this isn't unity. Now, of course, Shruti, leading up to his election, Zoran Mamdani was asked about his stance on Israel pretty frequently. This is due to the fact that the majority of American politicians will say that they are indeed pro-Israel. Mamdani has not been like that whatsoever. Is this more of the same from Mamdani? Is he doing what voters ask for here? He of course, has publicly criticised Israel, even though he's the mayor of New York. But what is your stance on this issue here? Does Eric Adams have a point?
Well, Eric Adams is a compromised entity on himself. The charges were dropped when the Trump regime came into power that you just spoke about in 2025. So now we have a person who has the taint, and of course has not been very popular because of his allowance of the ICE anti-immigration stance as well. So there is a large section of New Yorkers that are not happy. New York is an expensive city, and we all know that. It's very difficult to be there. So all the socialist promises that Mamdani sold, the socialist dreams that Mamdani sold, are going to come at the expense of somebody's tax dollars. And he's made it like tax the rich and give the poor for free. But that just is a very idealistic view. So apart from his ideas, his identity as a Muslim is also something that New Yorkers need to look at very carefully, because They did not see it, but it was viral on social media. Maybe it didn't come down to there. When the voters went down to vote, they had Andrew Cuomo, I believe, who was an independent supported by Trump, and also there was a Republican, but he was not as well supported by Trump. So this entire episode that has played out, Mamdani's victory, is something that people have to watch very carefully, because not only did he not support the IHRA, he's also allowed for protests against in front of places of religion. He's also allowed and he's also nullified the anti-boycott measures, which allows the BDS movement, which is boycott, let me just get this straight, boycott, dear God,
It's all right.
and sanction, and basically delist Israel from from being part of the economy of New York. So this is something that he's been working very hard on. So he's not just done this particular IHRA thing. He's allowing how violent the pro-Palestine protesters are, and when you allow them to go to worship sites, we've had that incident with Israeli diplomats being killed right outside in public spaces. So that is an issue. When you are revoking ICE agents and not allowing them to look at which criminals are or anti-national elements are going to be part of your entire public, then that puts you at risk. He has abolished 2 newly created offices. There are a lot of bans that he's done. It might look as if he has taken away any of the tainted orders that were implemented after the previous mayor was indicted. But basically his stance is very, very woke, if I can call it that, and it might not generally lead to sound policies, economic or administratively. And as I said, mentioned, go on social media, look at what he was saying as a Muslim to his Muslim brotherhood, as I could say. He would go to mosque and make very, very, very controversial statements, and that just shows that either he's a chameleon and dawns on the color of the people that he's standing with, or he truly is presenting a fake side, which also which is what I think is, he's presenting a fake socialist phenomena or facade for the world to see, because his appointment as his top legal person is somebody who defended Al-Qaeda associates. So there is a large question on where New York is headed under Mamdani.
Yeah, and of course, we will see if Mamdani does bring successfully in his policies that he did promise New Yorkers during his campaign. However, the revoked order tied criticism here of Israel to certain definitions of anti-Semitism. In other words, saying that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Where does the real tension lie here between free speech, pro-Palestinian activism, and protecting Jewish communities?
A Zionist away from a Jewish person without actually interacting with them on a personal day-to-day level. You cannot do that. So when you take away that kind of protection, where there is a large anti-Jewish sentiment in the world, when you take away that protection of that umbrella of protection, you leave a large number of people of that community which have faced persecution earlier, open to violence by protesters in the name of justice for Gaza or Palestine or any other place they can think of. So this is not as Mayor Adams said, former Mayor Adams said, that this is not unity. This is not being inclusive. This is just letting the wolves go at the sheep. It's very, very simple as that, because you cannot define them. At least not until, as I said, you have an in-depth interaction with them, know what they believe in, know what their final agenda is. You cannot turn around and call every Jewish a Zionist, or you cannot separate a Zionist from a Jewish person. And when you're unable to do that, that leaves Jewish people in campuses, in offices, on the streets, anybody displaying the 6-point star as having the mark of David on them, just like during the Nazi era. So it's a very, very dangerous situation that he has opened up for very, very marginalized community.
Okay, Shruti Dasgupta, thank you very much for joining us here on News Well. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. We now move on over to a related development, but in the Middle East, and Israel's Culture Minister Miki Zohar has sparked controversy by saying Gaza belongs to Israel and that Palestinians living there are guests only for now. Zohar added that while Israel is allowing them to live in the territory for now, Gaza ultimately remains under Israeli control. Zohar made the comments while explaining why he is considering withholding government funding from the Israeli film industry. He criticized a film that won Israel's top Ophir Award, which was about a Palestinian boy from the West Bank who was denied a permit to visit the beach. He claimed that it portrayed the Israeli Defense Forces negatively. The minister added that filmmakers who want government support should produce films that Israelis like to see, not what Europeans like to see. His remarks have drawn criticism from Palestinian groups, of course. We're now joined by Dr. Pansara Amaris Singh, a Middle East affairs expert, joining us live from Koltawala Defense University in Colombo. Thank you very much for joining us. A highly provocative statement there, of course, Dr. Amaris Singh. How significant are these remarks from Israel's culture minister? Are they political rhetoric, or do they reflect a deeper mindset within parts of Israel's leadership?
I don't think so that one should get flustered with these remarks made by this Israeli minister, who has developed a sense of notoriety for the political rhetoric. In particular, if you look at the political and electoral history of this specific minister, it clearly indicates the fact that he's been lampooning the two-state solution, and also he's been lampooning all these pro-Palestinian protests all around the world. But this should not go along with the public opinion of Israel. Specifically, if you just read the commentaries, the articles in the aftermath of the statement made by the minister, especially in very popular newspapers such as Jerusalem Post or the Times of Israel, most of the public servants and the activists have severely condemned the provocative statement comes from this minister, in particular with regard to his statement of the award-winning movie, which discusses about the Palestinian boy who came to Israel and his denial to enter into a beach. And also, from a vantage point of view, we need to understand that the minister represents Likud party. As you are clearly aware of the fact that Likud party severely opposes the two-state solution. Likud party's predecessor, Erdogan, in the advent of the state of Israel's inception, had been a vehement protester of coexistence with Arabs. So this statement goes hands in hand with the party ideology of the Likud party, which does not reflect the overarching, the public sentiments of the Israeli society.
Yes, but of course, the Likud party, as you mentioned, also Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader, is a member. He says, Benjamin Netanyahu that is, that eventually Gazans will govern themselves once again. Of course, probably not any time in the near future. Palestinians will govern Gaza again. Do you think that pushing this rhetoric will be an issue for the higher up leadership within the Likud party?
Yeah, precisely, because the Benjamin Netanyahu, even though he has been declining the entire concept of the two-state solution, right, with regard to the most recent peace negotiation brokered by the United States, he reluctantly admitted that. So eventually there would be a day that Gaza would be controlled by Palestinians, but not by Hamas, which has been the large strategy adopted by Israel in the aftermath of the hostage deal. So it seems to indicate that this particular statement is not the overall reflection of what IDF or what state of Israel maintains towards the problem in Gaza. And moreover, we need to understand that if you look at the certain fractions within the Israeli society, they have a knack on calling those Palestinian, the West Bank, as Judea and Samaria, which is a clearer reference to the Old Testament, the biblical term. They don't call Gaza as Gaza, pronounced by the Arabs. They specifically call it Philatia, right? So these are all political statements, political rhetoric, in my opinion. So I don't think so that one should take this statement very much seriously, even though it may contain certain political implications.
Indeed. Dr. Amara Singh, thank you very much for joining us here on News X World. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. We now move on, and 7 bodies have been recovered and 96 people rescued after a migrant boat capsized overnight in northwest Gambia, according to the country's defence ministry. Search and rescue operations are still ongoing as officials fear the vessel may have been carrying more than 200 people. The boat reportedly capsized around midnight near a village in Gambia's North Bank region and was later found grounded on a sandbank. A joint rescue operation was launched involving 3 naval speedboats, a coastal patrol vessel and a local fishing canoe whose operators volunteered to assist. Authorities said 10 of the rescued migrants are in critical condition and are receiving urgent medical treatment. Their nationalities have not yet been disclosed. The incident is the latest tragedy along one of the world's deadliest migrant routes, used largely by West Africans attempting to reach Spain's Canary Islands. More than 46,000 irregular migrants reached the islands in 2024, a record number, while over 10,000 died during the journey, according to rights groups. Despite a reported drop in migration along the route in 2025, the danger remains acute. Scientists using NASA's James Webb Space Telescope have identified a previously unknown type of exoplanet, challenging long-held ideas about how planets form. The object, named PSR, has stretched a lemon-like shape and an atmosphere dominated by helium and carbon rather than water or methane. Researchers say dark scoot-like clouds surround the planet, and extreme internal temperatures could compress carbon into diamonds deep below the surface. What makes the discovery even more unusual is the planet's host, a rapidly spinning neutron star or pulsar with the mass of the Sun but the size of a city. Because the pulsar emits mostly high-energy radiation invisible to Webb, scientists were able to observe the planet's atmosphere with unprecedented clarity. The planet orbits just 1 million miles from the pulsar, completing a full revolution in only 7.8 hours. Powerful gravity stretches the planet and may slowly strip material away, placing it in a rare black widow system. How such a carbon-rich planet forms remains a mystery, ruling out all known formation models. Researchers say the discovery remains a new frontier in understanding exotic worlds beyond our solar system. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching News X World for more international news updates.